with my, and then we will call on each of the panelists in turn to introduce themselves. Then we'll jump right into our panel questions. I'm Noelle Miller, and fun fact, I'm a dividend myself, who also has a dividend. So I am really excited for tonight's panel because growing up in a house with a fraternity crest on the wall, I always knew that this organization was a phenomenal opportunity to learn as a person of business and to be a part of a lifelong commitment. But I also watched my parents try to balance the fraternity and their career and our community and all the other things that we did. And as I came into the fraternity as a colonist, starting my chapter, and as a collegiate brother, I didn't see a ton of parents in leadership roles. So it's really been a phenomenal opportunity for me to watch many of those on the panel be parents and balance the fraternity and their family. And those folks have really been role models and inspiration for me as I started my family in 2020 and am now in that balancing act myself. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I'm going to start with the first brother on the panel that I ever met, and that's Barrett Carter. I met Barrett at the 2007 GCC when he sold me raffle tickets at the banquet. So Barrett, go ahead, sir, take it away. You do have to come off mute though.
That's the way it goes. My favorite shirt says, you're on mute. I should have worn it for today. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. It's good to see some faces I haven't seen in a while as well. Sometimes dividends do keep you away, as I'm sure many of the panelists know. My name is Barrett Carter. I'm a member of the Atlanta Alumni Chapter. I was from the Kappa Chapter at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. I was initiated in December of 1996, I believe it was. Been a while. I have enjoyed immensely my time as a brother. My wife is a brother. So we have some fun explaining that to some people that I married my brother. It does kind of confuse them at times. So it's been a blessing. And then having children with a brother, being able to attend, it's the whole reason of this event today with dividends. It's nice to be able to bring the children up. We took them to our first event at Grand Chapter, and I'm sure we'll get into that more, but it was nice to be able to do that, to have people meet them who'd seen them on Facebook or on Instagram, and actually get a chance to meet them face to face. But it's a blessing, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Glad to have you. Thanks, Barrett. All right, we will pop over to Liz and Tom Calloway, our couple on the panel. I actually realized belatedly, I think all three of our dads on the panel are also married to brothers. But Liz and Tom, got to meet them when I lived in the Northeastern province. Great leaders while I was there, and excited to hear more about their story tonight.
So I'll let you go first.
Well, evening or more, I guess it's evening for everybody. Tom Calloway. So I was initiated at Mu Pi up at Penn State Erie in December of '95. She actually has a couple weeks on me, so I'll let her explain that. But yeah, it's been an interesting trip. Deltasig definitely gave me a ton when I was in college, and then even right after college, I continued to enjoy it, receiving benefits of friendship and just guidance from some of the elder folks like Sparky. We'll call him older. But it's definitely been a whirlwind, and then bringing in dividends, it just another experience and another ad. So it's been fun.
And as Tom said, I do have a couple weeks on him because I am actually an initiate of the Alpha Gamma chapter, so at Penn State main campus. And so Tom and I did not meet in college, although upon reflection, even most recently, we realized we were probably at some events together and just didn't know it. Did not meet until a couple years after college through the Philadelphia Alumni Chapter. What Tom didn't take credit for is that he is Golden Counsel. He served as Eastern Region RVP for I think 2 terms.
4.5 terms.
4.5 terms. Oh dear, I've lost track. Sorry. I had the pleasure of serving as provincial chair for a couple of years in both community service and/or professional activities, as well as national chair for community service. And I think that's where, and I know Noelle will go into that, but I think that's where, as a Delta Sig with dividends now, that's where like all of the different opportunities to stay involved have been really fascinating and fantastic. And while I can't dedicate, I'm on pause, I think is the best way to say it, of a day-to-day involvement. I'm able to ebb and flow and kind of call to serve at more, targeted times. So serving as perhaps like a speaker at an event and again, talking about our dividends. We have 2 kids, a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old. Tyler, our 12-year-old, has been at every Grand Chapter Congress since he was 3 months old. He does not have a ladder. Lots of people ask us that. And we told him he does not get one until he becomes a brother. So that was our rule. Everybody else's rule is different, but he can say that he's been at every GCC since he was 3 months old. And our daughter is 6, she'll be 7 next month, and she's also been to every one. So we're really looking forward to at least popping into the virtual one, as well as, doing our road trip to Cleveland next summer. So that's us.
Awesome. Thank you, Callaways. We will jump to Miss Janine Markuski. Did I say that right?
Almost. It's Markuski.
Darn it. So Janine is the only mom, I think, who has served on the board in the time that I've been a brother and has been a role model. Oh, and Lisa Brown, my bad. And Lisa, and so has been a great role model in that perspective and just a wonderful friend to bounce ideas off of from a DEI perspective as well. So Janine, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I was initiated in 2005 at the Theta Sigma chapter at UCF in Orlando, and I served as the RVP for 4 years and then also the Southern PVP for 4 years before Carrie was the current PVP. I have 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and I was late to the meeting because my 1.5-year-old is teething and didn't want to go to sleep, just wanted to be held. So I'm always late, usually because of my kids. 95% of the time I could blame it on them, and it's true.
So reality is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. My son, my youngest, has been to LEAD before because my husband is overseas half of every year. I don't get to drag my kids along to the LEAD events and GCCs as often as I would like because I don't have anyone to hang out with them while I'm at Congress or at the sessions. But I've been active with the local fraternity and on the board since having kids, and it's been an adventure.
Thanks, Janine. We will jump out to the West Coast, the Western Province, and introduce Beth. Beth, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So I don't know, because I haven't been able to hear from all the panelists, but I think I'm the youngest brother here. I was actually initiated in 2019. And I graduated in 2020, which was a short brotherhood time, and then immediately was asked to become district director over my chapter, which is the Gamma Iota chapter at the University of New Mexico. That also means that when I was a collegiate, I had children. So I have a 17-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And why did I want to become a part of a fraternity at, I'd hate to say how old I am, but an older age, was because I was like wanting to experience college, but also get involved in an organization that had real meaning behind it. And what got me was the volunteer activities that Delta Sig does, and I was on board after that. So I can go on and on, but I actually got to take my daughter to a couple of the volunteer activities, which makes it even more special, bringing dividends along for the ride when you get to be a part of this organization. So yeah, that's a little about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Beth. All right, we will pop over to Jeff. Jeff is representing our North Central contingent and has been both in the Atlanta alumni chapter and now in Twin Cities. So we will let Jeff introduce himself.
Thanks, Noel. Yeah, I'm Jeff Blanchard. I was initiated in November 1994 in New Pi, Kansas State University, and I have been actively involved in both the Atlanta alumni and Twin Cities alumni. I have 3 children. They're amazing. I have a 13-year-old daughter, an 11 and 9-year-old son, and we are never still at this house. So all 3 kids and myself do karate. I'm also the assistant baseball coach for 2 baseball leagues right now. I am the merit badge counselor and adult web developer for the Boy Scout troop. I'm also the Cub master for the Cub Scout troop, and I sleep about 2 hours a night.
That was easy.
Thank you, Carter. And my children have been to multiple Deltasig events, and every year the Twin Cities Alumni Chapter does a Toys for Tot drive, and they look forward to helping us shop and be able to, they are with me every year when we drop the toys off for the Toys for Tots, because they love seeing the faces of everyone when we drop off 5 or 6 truckloads worth of toys. So it's fantastic.
Awesome. We are going to finish up with our last panelist, Angie, and I had the pleasure of meeting Angie as she's been National Community Service Chair and has organized some really phenomenal ways for us to give back at GCC and provincially as well. So Angie, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Schulp. I was initiated in the Iota Omicron chapter at Central Missouri State University in November of 1995. Honestly, I was a pledge at Otis, which predates our LEAD. And right, I love the older generation going, yay. And so I saw people were speaking, and I said, do they pay them? And people are like, no, they're volunteers. They just come back out of the goodness of their heart and, talk to us. And right then and there, I said, well, that's what I'm going to do too. And I wasn't even a brother yet. So it's been a very impactful thing for me to see everyone coming back and giving back as an alumni. So since I graduated, I have been in many different I'm involved in the Kansas City Alumni Chapter and held many different offices in that chapter. President a couple times already, and someone that I won't name is trying to get me to do it again this next year, but she's on this meeting. And then
you're gonna do it again. You're gonna do it again.
I've also been district director for 2 of our chapters in our region over the years, and then was the provincial community service chair, and then I was the national community service chair, and then swung back around and am currently the Midwestern regional vice president. So I've rarely not had a role. I mean, I've always been involved in the alumni chapter, but I've always had something that I was doing. And honestly, it fulfills me. And if that wasn't enough, I am my kids' marching band. Well, I guess it's just one kid now because Sabre just graduated this past Saturday. But I am the treasurer for their marching band. So right now we're super busy because we are planning a marching band trip to Hawaii in December. And so the kiddos have $200 payments every month. And so at the end of every month, I'm sitting here collecting envelopes and recording payments and making sure that's all kept up to date. I love doing that too. I remember somebody saying to me in high school, why are you involved in so many things? Are you just padding your resume? And I'm like, no, honestly, every single thing that I say yes to means something to me. And so I do it because I love it.
I love this panel. So thank you all for being here tonight and for introducing yourselves. As I listened to your introductions, one of the things that struck me is that everybody has things in Deltasig that they are very passionate about and grateful to give back, but also have things outside of Deltasig where they're giving back and making a difference as well. And I think that as you talked about those things, a lot of them have to do with your dividends. And so I think it leads right into our first question, which is, how has having dividends enriched your Deltasig life? A lot of us talked about how it's enriched our community service engagement, and a couple of us mentioned them in Deltasig, but how has it enriched your Delta Sigma Pi life? And we'll look for 3 or 4 of us to answer it, and then we'll pop over to the next question. I saw Jeff come off a mute first, so.
I win. Woohoo! I'll say, it's been great. Like, I've known Carter since he was initiated in 96, and we talk about a bunch of things, but it's great when we talk about our children's lives and be able to share stories. I met Liz not because we're brothers, but because our kids are all in Scouts. And so we were able to share stories, and during the pandemic, learning opportunities on how our kids were being able to weather the storm of the pandemic in Scouts. So it's been able to allow me to be able to bridge some of those gaps and make additional relationships that prior to having the dividends, I probably would not have made.
Strengthening those bonds of brotherhood. Barrett.
Yes, I would say that, and I agree with Jeff, it is certainly, you communicate in different ways. I'm in Cub Scouts as well and the leader of our troop. My wife is the treasurer. So we stay involved, and partly because our children are involved. So we can do it as a family. So on Tuesday nights, on Tuesday nights, we were always at Scouts, which ironically is the same time that the Atlanta Alumni Chapter meets. So we've had to take, and I'm sure other brothers that have children understand this, we've had to take our priorities and shift them a little bit more towards our children. So whenever the Atlanta Alumni Chapter does something outside of Tuesday nights, we try to do what we can to, either one of us makes it, or we get a sitter, we both make it, or if it's kid friendly, we go together as a family. But it is a challenge. But I think when you ask the question about how they've enriched our lives and become a different, my best answer is it helps you become a different kind of leader, because you now have younger children that are looking at you and seeing what you're going to do. And they're really young, they don't understand it, but as they get older and they're trying to time manage for their own. My son graduated from elementary school today, so we did the big parade and all that. And I told him, I said, when you get to 6th grade, it gets real. Things get real when it comes to homework, when it comes to your work ethic, when it comes to the things that you're expected to do. You were very involved and you're a big fish in a small pond, and now you're about to be a small fish in a big pond. And you're going to make that switch over the summer. So I think it does, from an enrichment standpoint, it changes a little bit of who you are as the children go older, and they begin to see you more, not as just the dad, but as a parent, as a friend, as a spouse, as a neighbor, as a Cub Scouts leader, as a Taekwondo, or in Jeff's case, karate fellow mat mate, as they're called. So I think it does add opportunities to your life that you don't understand without children, and a little different when you're married. I went through different phases as a collegiate, as an alumni, as a married man, and as a father. And now I'm an involved father with things that my children do, as well as things that my children don't do, that they see me do. But they do watch at all times, and I'm sure you all know that they are constantly watching, and whether they're speaking or not, which unfortunately mine are always talking, but they are always watching.
Thanks, Barrett.
I think I would want to echo kind of a little bit of what both Jeff and Barrett said, but I think also too, I'm the oldest of 4, and none of my siblings went the route of a business fraternity. My 2 sisters did social sororities, and my brother did a social fraternity. And I think I mentioned that because I feel like Delta Sig, as I was growing within it before becoming a parent, like I was learning a set of skills and everything. And now, like, the tables have turned, and I wouldn't say I've necessarily mastered all of those skills, but now I have new people that need to learn those skills. And and now you're catching that, because honestly, more and more people are expected to know things earlier and earlier and stuff like that. And so I have that too. Yes, there's a thematic here around Scouts, but it's like, so now we're teaching our kids about how to interact with others, elders that they've maybe never interacted with, and Deltasig has given us that. Like, there is not a shy bone in either of my children's body. I don't think, I'm fairly confident that if you've been at Congress, you've met my kids, you've been at the community service table with them, and they've probably put crayons and pencils in your hand and said, you will do this. And so I think that that's kind of one of the unique things about Deltasig is that kind of dialogue and that kind of dynamic around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Liz and Barrett both touched on a point that I was thinking about as I reflected on these questions around, it makes you a different type of leader, right? You have to coach your kids through learning all of these things. And as Joan mentioned in the chat, right, coaching your daughter in a college sorority as to what to do as a colony member, as they're forming a chapter, we build all these skills that are different and unique, and then have the opportunity to pass them on. It also makes me interact with the collegiate brothers in a different way, because I learn one way, my son learns a different way, my collegiate mentees learn a different way, and you have to kind of work through all those different points and be able to be flexible and shift. And it makes me think about teaching and coaching and mentoring in a different way, being a mom. So awesome. Well, we'll move on to our second question. What tips do you have for parents and other professionals as they balance the fraternity, their careers, maybe your outside involvement? Like, what makes you, or allows you to get through the day? And we'll start with Angie, since she's off mute.
So my number one thing is remember that it's okay to say no. I stepped out of the DD role for just a couple of years when Ellie was little, because I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my husband was a high school teacher at the time and was also coaching 2 different sports. So that made me not as much of a single parent as Janine, but somewhat of one. And so I've also throughout the years have told everybody, hey, I'm willing to do these roles, but I have also openly said that if a Deltasig event conflicts one of my kids' events, then I choose my kids, and it has to be that way. But on the flip side, like you've all said, I've brought my kids along with me to any events that I could. They've done numerous community service events with the Kansas City Alumni Chapter, joined at many alumni dinners, picnics, baseball games, holiday dinners, and Sabra's even joined an IOTA chapter meeting when she was 2 years old, because I just couldn't find a babysitter that night. So she tagged along. So in everything, you've got to have balance. And, if one area or one aspect of your life is suffering, you really have to take a moment and say, what is important to me, evaluate and adjust. Because someone once told me that if your family life isn't stable, then your work life isn't going to be stable. And that's the same thing as with the fraternity. If any one part is in peril, then it's all going down. So you've got to stop and adjust the thing that needs help. And so that's my tip is, what's right for you and your family, whether it be your personal blood family or your fraternity family. So it's okay. It's okay to say no.
Wise words, Janine.
I completely agree. That my thoughts on that question were balance. That was my immediate answer, is that balance is the key, because now you have something else on the scale. I was a Leadership Foundation trustee for 2 terms and was going to serve a 3rd term right about the time my 3rd term election was coming up, right after my daughter was born. And I had to choose family over you know, especially with young kids like that, was the requirements of a trustee. There's a little bit of travel involved, and I couldn't do it, and I couldn't do it wholeheartedly, knowing that I'd be taking time away from my family and away from my wife, was home with 2 small children. So I knew that I could not do that. But I do also find that one fuels the other. Like where I'm able to participate in the fraternity more so at certain points in time, I'm able to then switch and participate more in my family's life at different points in times. My children, God willing, will be there for a long time, but also the fraternity will be. So I had to step back and dedicate more time to my family as they're younger. The first 6 to 7 years or so, very formidable for children. So I wanted to do that. That was my priority. And so that's why I stepped back. And something I learned a while back is to never forget your why. Like, why do you do it? Why do you have the job that you have? Why did you marry the person that you married? Why do you live where you live? What is your career like? Why are you active outside of your W-2 and your vows? What do you do for your life? What is your why? What keeps you going every day? And for me, it goes back to balance. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing sometimes. So that balance is key.
Thanks, Barrett. Janine, you had some thoughts you wanted to share?
I have a little bit more practical kind of advice. I think that get yourself a shared calendar. My kids have events, my husband has events, I do things, and getting that piece of software or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, shared calendar where everybody can contribute to, so everybody knows where everybody's going to be and what's happening on every day of the week. Because like my calendar fills up at least 2 weeks in advance. So if it's tomorrow, it's not going to happen. If it's gonna be like a week from now, maybe, but good luck. I have to make sure that I have everything. Yeah, exactly. That Google Calendar is amazing. Oh, and also a Google shopping list, or, sometimes we use Amazon shopping list. Ours is Google. You add things to the list. So we're out of toilet paper, make sure you tell Google, because, if I go to the store and I don't know that we're out, then sorry, we're going to have to use socks for a week. I don't know. Because the next time I go to the grocery store isn't going to be like tomorrow. Sorry, kids. So yeah, I highly recommend getting yourself a shared calendar and a shared shopping list, because man, that's been like an amazing lifesaver for us as a family.
Communication with your spouse too. This is our camp schedule for the summer for both kids and everything that they're doing, because if we don't, we're planning now into September, and if we don't, it won't happen.
Yep.
As you can't do camps overnight. Sometimes you got to apply for these things 6-9 months in advance, so you have to think about it. And if you don't write it down, every Sunday my wife and I get together and we talk about the week, what schedules are going to happen, what's normal, what's going to be new, what appointments do we have, and then we talk about what nights are we going to have dinner at home, what nights do we have to eat out. And if so, what's our menu going to be? The kids pick one meal apiece. We fill out the rest of the meals, and then we go shopping, and we have all the groceries at the house on Sunday. If that doesn't happen, all hell breaks loose. You wind up eating out $60, $70, $80, for a meal. It tanks the budget, and it tanks the schedule, and it adds to your waistline. At least for mine, it does. So I got to push back a little bit and plan ahead.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Janine, you had some tips that you want to share as well.
I was really going to say the same exact thing that Angie was saying, is know when you have to say no and when to step back. But going along with that, there are always ways to participate in the fraternity that don't require a whole bunch of time or a whole bunch of travel. Committees or doing stuff, helping central office, or being on a task force, or just helping the local alumni chapter or being a DD, those are typically smaller time, commitments than traveling for LEAD or, being an RVP or PVP. So, probably like 2 years ago, I really wanted to be a Leadership Foundation trustee. And after filling out the entire application and nearly hitting send, I finally took a step back and said, no, I just don't think I have the time to do it. Like, I'm pregnant and I'm about to have this baby, and I don't want to do a bad job at a fraternity commitment or any commitment in my life. And I knew that I just wasn't going to have the time to commit, even though my heart was in it. So you have to find the balance, but sometimes that balance is saying no to one thing and maybe doing something a little bit smaller. So be creative if you don't have the big time to commit to something. And then also, for parents or even for just people who have partners and spouses that are not in the fraternity, I married my husband, who I've known for 25 years, but he's not in the fraternity. So he comes to the fraternity events and he meets all of my friends, and he loves hanging out with my friends at the fraternity events, even though he's an introvert. So he gets really intimidated at the big events, but you get him into like a 5-person little conversation and he'll thrive. So don't be afraid to bring your partner or your spouse with you to these events, even if they're not a fraternity brother.
That's a great call out. My husband got grilled by my parents' friends from 30 plus years ago, before I was born, when we showed up at the New Orleans GCC engaged. But it was great. It was wonderful. He loved it. He came with me to Atlanta, and he's looking forward to Cleveland next year. So, all right, we are going to jump to our next question. What could the fraternity do to further engage and include Deltasigs with dividends, or non-brother spouses for that matter? So we'll throw that one out there.
Sorry to talk twice in a row. I would say from a local alumni chapter perspective, we have to encourage our leadership in the local alumni chapters to not always have their events at bars, because typically bars are not child friendly, or if they are child friendly, maybe nobody wants to actually hang out with kids at a bar. Infants you can bring to a bar because it's funny and they're mobile, but the 4-year-old or 5-year-old, nobody in a bar wants to see my kid coloring on the bar. So we have to expand the types of events that we're having to try to include people who are non-drinkers, who need accessible hours outside of maybe 5 to 7 on a weekday, because if they have their own life commitments, like I'm in Rotary, like my Rotary Club meets on Wednesday nights. If there's a fraternity event on a Wednesday night, I then have to pick which organization do I want to go to that night. So have maybe lunch meetings or a lunch get together or a weekend event. There's all types of accessibility that local alumni chapters can do to improve the reach that they have with people who are not just, 5 to 7 after work drinkers. Because, people who are non-drinkers don't want to go to bars. And people who are parents don't want to go to bars unless they're trying to get away from their kids for the night. And I'm all for that too. So maybe someone else could talk about, bigger fraternity aspects, and I'll just talk about local stuff.
I would say for me, leadership being shaped by my children, it's taught me that patience is free and patience is very difficult. When I say that, I mean with my children, trying to be a leader in a fraternity organization, trying to be a leader in a real estate office, trying to be a leader at home, or different types of skills, different types of leadership. They both take planning. They both take changing your priorities, and sometimes on the fly. And one of the things that's taught me is that my friends in my fraternity will be there tomorrow, but my family in the early years requires my support now. And I'll have fraternity members tomorrow more so than I'll have a small child, because they, after having attended a 5th grade graduation today, I mean, I'll be quite frank with you. I cried at the graduation while I'm driving in my truck with my wife and son in the back, playing a song from Wind Shaped Camp that my son's advancing. You know, they're going to summer camp this year for a month. I mean, 3 camps for a total of a month. And if they could leave school today, which they did, and come back the day before next year, they would be gone the whole entire summer and not care. But I want to spend time with my children and my wife as a family. So having to choose family over friends at time, especially when they're younger, is important. I think that's what guides my leadership a bit as a young father than it used to when I was just a married man.
I'd love to see at events like GCC or others activities for families, for people with kids, because I can guarantee you right now, of everyone on the panel, my kids, Liz's kids, and Barrett's kids would all get together and they'd all get along because they have common things that they can talk about and common threads, and they would get along great if they had 1 or 2 events that were at GCC or national events. And the other thing is, you get them in now, they understand, they see their parents, they see us at national events, they kind of know and get what it is, and then you get them involved. Then all of a sudden now you've recruited someone who's 6, 7, 8. They'll grow up remembering those events, remembering the good times, remembering mom and dad, and now you don't have to work hard to recruit them when you get into college. So some sort of events that are family friendly during the national events would be very, very useful.
Yeah, I thought about that, Noel, and when it comes to this is about brothers with dividends, and I know it's probably not as easy. Maybe it's easier at the local level, and certainly not at the provincial level, like LEAD school level, but it would be easier at the national level if there was a way to do events for the dividends, not just brothers with dividends. So, it's not the kids being dragged by the parents to an event for the parents. It's the parents going willingly with the kids to do an event for them at a national event. So you're likely not going to have a lot of brothers there that don't have children, but that's the point, right? It's just the opposite of what a lot of national events are, is they're professional. You're not going to take a child with you on a resume session, right? There are a lot of breakout sessions that you don't have kids at because they're not there for that, but you have something for the dividends that will bring the brothers. I think there's a way to sort of, you're looking at it from a different perspective, but they're going to be there. Like Jeff said, they're going to be there. The kids are going to be together, like Liz and Tom's kids. They get together, your kids will show up, our kids will show up, and then it's the kids having a good time and it's the parents just letting them do their thing. But you get to do it every 2 years or every year, however it works out. So having something for the dividends, not just for the brothers that have dividends.
It's funny. I belong to a social Greek letter organization, and many of you know that I served on their board for a period of time. And at our equivalent of GCC, the registration booklet includes, here's the plenary sessions and all that information. Here's the honey-dos, which is all the non-members' spouses, right? For us, all the husbands. And then there's here's the honey-don'ts schedule, and it's literally, you have sessions you can choose from. They have zoo trips, they have a pool party, they do this, they do that, there's ages for the kids. It's different because we have 25,000 people in attendance, so those groups are massive. But even if you bring that down to scale, you could still offer 1 or 2 of those types of events and just, like Jeff said, bring the kids in, give them an opportunity. It also means that we don't have to push so hard to start new chapters at schools because our dividends just come forward and want to start one. Angie, I think I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, so my suggestion is to move Congress a week earlier so that we avoid the first day of school for some of these kids. I've been dealing with that for quite some time. But in all seriousness, I think it takes us to be vocal about what type of events that we need. I've been very, very fortunate in the Kansas City alumni chapter that this group of individuals absolutely knows my kids. 8 of them came to Sabra's graduation party this past Saturday. I think that they consider my kids, like their own nieces or nephews. And I really treasure that relationship. And so throughout these years, they've always said, hey, what kind of events can we do so that Angie's kids can come along? And so we've gone to baseball games, we've had picnics, they've always been invited to holiday parties. But I just think that in any of these events, and I love the idea of starting, more kid-friendly events at the larger conferences. I think it's incredibly important for them to see that aspect also. I've always talked about things that we do with our fraternity in a very abbreviated state, and I've always said, well, we've got sacred ceremonies and secrets, but I also talk about the professionalism. And my youngest, Ellie, was actually joined the Thespian Society a couple of weeks ago, and they have, very much like us, a very secret ceremony and a very solemn ceremony. And as we were driving home, they were like, I get what you mean now, why it's so important to you, because there's just stuff that and that you value, and it means so much to you. And so, maybe if they see all aspects of that, maybe they just have a greater understanding earlier in their lives.
I love it. Any other thoughts on events? I will share one that came through the comments. Really appreciate this idea from alumni chapter Pier 9 Long Beach. Vito shared that last year, or the last 3 years, they asked brothers what their kiddie schedules were, so they knew what karate night was and what theater night was and those sorts of things, and what time of year those events happened, so they could plan events that were kid friendly when the kids might be available, and maybe not so kid friendly on nights that it wasn't going to work for parents to be there anyway. So kind of some interesting opportunities there. All right, so we have a couple of questions from our wonderful attendees. So I'm going to jump to some of these. If your partner is not a brother, so only a couple of us can answer this, how do you balance your dividends and the fraternity, attending fraternity events, and your partner understanding or growing to love the fraternity?
I'll jump in. So my husband, when we first met in 1999, I was asked to kind of do the Mid-American Province World Tour with Kathy Jenke. And I was hitting 3 different conferences at the time, because everything was organized a little different then. And so he was not my husband at the time, and he was just like, so are they going to pay you to do this? I'm like, no, this is volunteer. He was like, I don't get this. Why are you spending money to travel to all these places and do these speaking events and you're not getting paid? And I said, it's just how it is, honey. Like, I can't explain it to you. So I invited him to the last one, which was in Bloomington, Illinois. And we drove. So he actually proposed to me the night before we left. And so then we drove all the way to Bloomington. It's like 10 or 11 hours. And there he got to meet people like Pete Magellan and Jeff Zick and Kathy Jenke, and just had such a great time. And so now he gets there and he goes, okay, all right, I get it. And so I think that, you just kind of have to introduce them into the environment and kind of show them why you love it so much. And so, he's been involved and been to many congresses and knows what's going on. And now he's been asked to become a brother himself. And so we'll see if we can make that happen within the next year. But I think it's just a matter of helping them understand, why it's so important to you.
Yeah, Angie, when I met my wife, she was not a brother. Did attend multiple events. You know, we have lifelong friends that are brothers, Carters, the Nasons. You know, we have multiple different friends, and she attended multiple fraternity events with me throughout the years and saw the benefit of it and was asked to be an honorary initiate and jumped at the chance. And then now she's a brother. So, you know, bringing her along and sharing what good fortune I've received from becoming a brother and staying actively involved and being able to share that with my spouse, and even more importantly with my children, so they can see what we're getting from the fraternity, because you only get out what you put in. And so we make sure that we continue to put in and show them that value. And so being able to share that with all the members of my family has been extremely important for me.
So I had to ask my husband if I could join the fraternity because we were married, right? So, you know, like when I decided to do this, it was like a joint decision. So it had to come from both of us. And I actually took him to one of the events, a recruitment event, where we got to hear a little bit from another alumni member from our chapter. And after that event, I was like, so what do you think? Can I join? And he's like, let's do this. So it was a joint decision. So I think like including him on that was really important. And then also including him on any opportunities that come around. Like, you know, we got to do a lot of the, he hasn't been able to attend any of the volunteer events, but he was able to attend a professional event with me and some social events as you would expect. You know, he's been able to do that with me. And now that I'm part of the alumni chapter, you know, there's a lot more people that are more our age and we get to do events together in that aspect. I have not been able to do a GCC yet, and I'm super looking forward to that for next year. And now I will definitely invite my spouse to that, because that was something I didn't realize was a thing. So yay.
Got to give it to you, Beth. We haven't had the pleasure to meet face to face, but I'm no mathematician either, but I did the math pretty quickly and said you have 3 children with their ages and you didn't join a fraternity until 2019, which means you were in the fraternity as a collegiate, if you will, with both a spouse and 3 not too young children. That's hands down, that's impressive, because I know what it was like without children and then with young children, and I was like, I'm out and I'll have to come back later, and I still stay in touch and I join when I can. But my God, that's kudos to you for that. That's
well, I think you said it earlier, their formative years are pretty young, but yeah, my kids were 6, the youngest was 6 and 8. So, and then of course my 15-year-old. And so, yeah, I was the mom of the collegiate chapter. I was the mom
really.
walking into
I was.
And so, yeah, it was I had a brother ask me, you know, he's like, you know, why? I mean, what are you getting out of this? And I said, this is exactly what I'm getting. I'm getting you. I'm getting a whole brotherhood of people who are like-minded individuals who have goals and aspirations. And I'm not only learning from you, I'm learning from everybody else around me in this chapter. And so I am so excited and blessed that I joined when I did. And I wish I could have done it sooner, but it just happened the way it happened. So yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Beth, definitely bring your husband, but feel free to bring the dividends too. We will be more than happy to see them. Awesome. We have a couple more questions, and I'm just going to call in 1 or 2 panelists because I want to make sure we get to a couple of the questions that came in on the chat. Advice for young Deltasigs who may be about to be parents for the first time and don't want to lose touch with DSP. That one's a tough one. North Central, I feel like, has had a baby boom lately. Liz and Tom.
So I was actually I think my experiences with early in my Deltasig alumni career would probably parallel well. So before I met Tom and, you know, early in our relationship, I traveled for a living. I got on an airplane every Monday morning. I came home every Thursday or Friday. And so I took advantage of all of the various different things about Delta Sig that I could. And that included, and Janine touched on it too, understand where you can give and understand what is available in terms of how to give back. There are task forces, there are committee memberships at both the provincial and in the and at the national level. Go and stay in touch with all of those folks and use that to your timing benefits. If you can only give an hour or two a month, but you have flexibility around that, there's always somebody that can needs help with planning an event or whatever. And so you can kind of do that and fit it in and ebb and flow, but you're staying in touch, you're keeping that pulse kind of going.
That's what I was gonna say. At a minimum, keep the relationships going with fraternity brothers. You can always step away and then come back, and you can always, as Angie said at the very, very early, learn to say no, recognize, and do time management. And if at this point in time, young kids take a lot of time and effort out of your day, you've got to learn time management and understand what is important to you. And as a young parent, I hope that the children are the most important part of your day, and learning how to work everything else around the family, because the time goes by quickly. I just remember when my daughter was born, she's 13 now, getting ready to turn 14. And like Jones, I know I blink and they're going to be in college. And then I'll be able to put a lot more time towards the fraternity and other events. But at this time, I am very actively involved because I chose to be a parent and I want to be part of their lives. So I make conscious choices to be part of my kids' lives and be there for all the activities that they're doing.
Two quick points, Noel. One, family comes first, regardless of fraternity. Fraternity will be there, so will your family, but your family will grow faster than the fraternity will. And that's in your shadow, your neck of the woods, where you can control it. And two, there are multiple ways to give: time, treasure, and talent. So if you can't be present at an event, you can write a check when you're young, and the check can be a small amount. The check can be $10, it can be $20. It's your opportunity to provide financially to the organization, whether it's local at the chapter, paying your dues and staying active, or doing something at the national level. You can give from your time, and when you're a young parent, you don't have a lot of that. You really don't, especially with children under the age of 5 or 6, and they start getting more active. But especially when you have very, very young kids, it's very, very, very important, in my opinion, that you be home with them and spend as much time with them as you can. The fraternity will understand. And the other is talent. So if you can't help in present, but you have a skill that you can provide online or by email or over, and now everybody's doing Zoom calls. If you can help and participate, as Liz was talking about, where you're on a committee and you're participating that way, there's a lot of ways you can give without having to fly across the country to a national event for a weekend and fly back. It's not just about presenting yourself at a national event.
Awesome. So we have 2 questions that I want to get to, and Jeff, I'm going to send this one back to you. You mentioned for a second stepping away and coming back, and that was one of the questions that came from our audience was, what advice do you have for a brother who has stepped away with young kids in that first 5-10 years, right? And then is interested in coming back in, and they're having some difficulty assimilating.
Yeah, and it's a different viewpoint when you come back and participate. I was very active in the Atlanta alumni chapter. I was an officer for multiple years, had children, stepped away, moved up here, and was still away from Twin Cities alumni chapter, and then came back in and started being more and more active. Do what you can. If you want to get more involved, reach out. And again, relationship building is everything. Is reach out to those that you know, and if you don't know anyone, reach out to someone you do know and see if they can put you in contact with someone to get you back involved. Make sure that you have that good comfort level, because like I said before, and we've all heard this through recruiting and everything else, you only get out of it what you put into it. And if you want to come back into it, feel free to come back into it and understand your limits. If it's only 1 or 2 hours a month that you can come back into it, I am sure the alumni chapter or national would love to have those couple hours. It could be on a awards committee to review the awards, or it could be just sitting there on a community service committee talking about different activities that could be coming in. Just the first step is actually to take that first step, pick up a phone, or reach out to alumni chapter and say, I want to get back involved and find out what activities there are in the area.
Thanks, Jeff. So we have one last question, and it just popped in. It's a little bit of a hardball question, so I'll apologize in advance. But the question that came up is, do you feel as a Delta Sig with dividends that Delta Sigs with dividends are well represented in our national leadership team? And Angie, as a member of our national leadership team, do you maybe want to speak on this one first?
You know, I would say that it was definitely represented when I was a new alumni. It was kind of something that I said, is it possible? Because for the longest time, you know, none of our PVPs or GPs in my time frame had children, and I think it was just kind of, for me anyway, it was just kind of a matter of a goal that I set for myself, that I said, I am going to do it. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to figure out a way. And so that's why I've stayed involved. And so now, you know, what I see now is that tide turning. I see that there are more people that have families that are getting involved and staying involved, and are being represented on those larger venues. And you know what? It doesn't need to be everyone. We need everybody's perspective. I mean, that's the whole point of diversity. So we can't just say, hey, we all have to be, you know, with family. That wouldn't serve our fraternity well. We wouldn't be well represented if everybody was like that. So I appreciate that we have such a diverse group of leaders. And so I just pray that, you know, that we are able to say, hey, having family doesn't preclude us from doing it. It's everyone's, you know, it's everyone's prerogative on what they feel that they can attain and accomplish. And so we shouldn't look at it as a negative. We should see it as a positive on just bringing different viewpoints to our leadership.
And don't like, you know, when you're recruiting, if you're in the collegiate chapter and you're recruiting people, don't say, oh, that's a mom that doesn't need to join. We don't need to talk to her. I am the perfect example of that. Hi, baby. Hi. So like, and that guy that might, you know, have a few gray hairs on his head, don't leave them out. They want to be part of this organization. I'm going to tell you that they want to be a part of our organization. We have a great fraternity. And so don't think that they couldn't be involved. Don't think that they don't have a place with us, you know, and make those opportunities to be able to get those people involved. I think it'll be it'll be a good thing for our fraternity if you can get them involved.
I see what you did there, Beth, with I took my hat off and did this, and you saw the gray and you made that comment. I get it. I know. I got you. I see where you're coming from. I'm with you.
I love what Angie said, though. She had it read the very, very end, is it gives a different perspective. We all know that there's different brothers in different phases of their lives. We've got the collegiates, which is where a lot of the national focus is on, but then we've got the adults that don't have dividends and adults that do have dividends. And having someone on the national board or multiple that are on the national board that have dividends allows that viewpoint to come through as well, and makes the decision-making process, you know, gives different inputs and different viewpoints, and it allows us to be a little more well-rounded in the events that we put on as a fraternity.
You definitely have a lot of multitaskers trying to plan events. I could tell you that. They'd be good at that.
Amen to that one.
It's like having Chick-fil-A drive-through try to operate something. Just give it to them, those people. They'll take care of it.
All right. Well, this has been a phenomenal panel. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just give their closing thought, their closing nugget as we wrap up. And I'll end with myself. So I'm going to actually start on the West Coast and we'll move east. Beth, can we start with you?
Good. Well, like I said, I think my closing thing is don't stop volunteering. And if you need to take a break, but I think every opportunity you can get to be involved in this organization, do it, because it's well worth it. It's well worth it for your kids. It's well worth it for your soul. I couldn't say anything more than that.
Thank you. Angie.
I agree. I just, if you love something, keep doing it. And whether that's family, whether that's fraternity, keep doing it. I really think that, like earlier, your question was, how has your dividends enriched your fraternity life? I really think that the fraternity has enriched my dividends. They've had so many opportunities to participate in philanthropy, part of this organization. And I love that they can see me in that arena. And I love that they have been able to actually come and join us in so many of those events. And so I just think it's a two-way street that I think each enriches the other.
Absolutely. Jeff.
Yeah, when I'm asked what I do for a job or what's my career, I always answer, I'm a parent, I'm a husband, and I'm a DevOps developer. And it's in that order. Being a parent's number one, being a spouse is number two, and DevOps developer. So priority of life, like Barrett was saying earlier, I do the things that are important, and then I fit everything else in. And if you want to be part of the fraternity, there's always an opportunity for you to be part of the fraternity. If you want to squeeze it in and you have the time management, which everyone on this panel knows as a parent, if you don't have time management, you don't have hair, because you're going to be pulling it all out. So,
Sorry, I thought I was on mute.
That's okay.
So, if you want to join, be part of the fraternity, we want to have everyone be part.
That's okay, Barrett. You must have known it was your turn next.
Well, I said I saw Tom reach for his head, then I realized I had a hat on for a particular reason. I'm not going to say why, but I think my answer would be Deltasig is for life, and never forget it. And that life, when you graduate from college, it may involve a spouse and marriage. It may not. It may involve a spouse and then a family. It may not. It may involve a spouse and a family with a lot of children, a lot of dividends. It may not. Your career will likely change, whether it stays in business or does something else. Your life is going to happen, and it will happen in different directions for different people. But the fraternity is for life. And I've been in this organization for a few Sundays, and I'd be willing to bet you that when life throws you a curveball, and it will, just depends on how fast and how much it curves, it will throw you a curveball, multiple curveballs throughout your life. I've never known a brother to turn their back on somebody else because of the challenges that life gives them. If anything, I've seen brothers come together because of the challenges that life gives them. So don't let that affect you. It is for life. Keep that in mind. And sometimes your life priorities and focuses just need to shift a little bit. And as I said once or twice before, family comes first. And when you are young, and the Delta Sig fraternity is your family, but then when you get married and have kids or adopt children or have whatever life presents to you, that's what your life is. And fraternity will always be there.
Thanks, Barrett. All right, Janine and Sally, what are your thoughts?
Well, Grandma just left and she didn't get to say bye. So now someone is a little upset. Okay. All right. Do you want to say hello to everybody? Can you say hello? Look, they're all waving at you. This is life.
You'll be okay.
We'll send grandma a message.
Right. I was just going to wrap up and say, I don't even know what I'm going to say at this point. I'm distracted.
What are you distracted about? What could possibly be going on?
I don't know, which is probably about to knock over my screen here.
And that's the perfect example of every night at all of our houses right there.
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Okay. All right, we're going to pop over to Tom and Liz for their final thoughts.
I think the big thing, and it echoes what everybody has said previously, is being involved doesn't mean you have to be grand president. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a leader of all leaders. There are ways to be involved. There are ways to stay involved and stay in touch with the fraternity, even when you have kids, when you have other commitments to give back, and it's a balance. And I just want to echo that the what you give forward, or what you put forth, is what you're going to get back. And a fraternity for life, like Barrett said. So stay involved how you can, balance the effort, and you'll enjoy the that you have, even with your dividends and your spouse and your friends. So keep going forward.
Yeah, I think Tom summed it up really well. And you know, I know we didn't solutions or anything like key, and you know, and Deltasig and your involvement in it is both the same and different than any other organization. And it's what you put into it. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. If you're making a decision now that you have, you know, a family, and that family could be, you know, fur babies, or, you know, human babies, or just you know, you and a significant other, you know, you've made commitments, and you need to as a family are not making any announcements right now yet, but we're in the process of making a big decision for our house. And I've made sure that, you know, all right, Allie's a little too young for a decision part of it, but, you know, Tyler is aware of, and, you know, and it's, you know, it's super exciting, but at the same time, you know, it's a balance. And so Deltasig is the same but different in that same fashion. And so you're kind of take advantage of it, but also making sure that your family, your circle is aware and is supportive of it. And you know, and the converse is true. If your significant other's not in Deltasig, but they have a path. And that's it.
Thank you. Oh, we got almost all the dividends. Hi, Smiles. Hi, JB.
Hey.
Now my kids don't
I
want to
have
talk.
no idea who anybody is here, so hello.
Hey, JB. Hey, Smiles.
We all know you guys.
Okay, that's good to know.
I'm going to mute now because my kids don't have filters. Bye.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of our amazing panelists.
We know who you are.
for this evening. It's been such a pleasure hearing from each of you, and as we all continue to serve the fraternity and balance our dividends and our family, I think Liz really hit the nail on the head, making sure that our village is around us and can support us through all of the things that we commit to in the fraternity, and all of the changes that we undertake is really key to our success, balancing the fraternity and our family, but also to the fraternity's long-term success as we bring those different perspectives to the table. So thank you all for being here and for sharing those perspectives tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Vito for our closing.
All right, great. Thank you, Noel. Thank you to all our panelists. It's been a great night. I really enjoyed everyone's responses, and definitely seeing all the dividends come in. I'm going to put up the province roll call poll. You know, if you've been to a FRAC event, you know that's one thing we have to get done. So go ahead and put your responses. Which provinces are you representing, or province are you representing? Also, what is FRAC? FRAC is the Fairbanks unofficial